Good afternoon. I know it's the tail end of a long afternoon, so we're going to switch gears and make it a little bit different. So we're at the Colorado School of Mines, so we will be talking about a mine. Before I get into that, I was tell a little bit of a story about my teenager who's 17, and the typical scene at home. He's sitting on the couch, he's got his earbuds in, he's looking at his phone, he's got his laptop on in front of him, and he's watching TV. I can't consume that much media at one time, but he is blissfully unaware of all the critical minerals that are making that amount of media possible for him, and specifically copper. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. Copper is the metal of electrification. It is really required in just about everything from distribution to storage to transmission and to generation. And today in the US, we use about 2 million tons a year of copper. We make about 1, so we're 50% net import reliant. And in the next 10 years, we'll need to double that if we were to do the energy transition, plus all the business as usual ways that we use copper today. So I'm not going to talk to you too much about how you produce copper or where it comes from or the geology or the engineering, because when you have a deposit like Resolution Copper, which is the second largest undeveloped deposit in the world for copper, it can meet the nation's demand, 25% of current demand. Plus, we have about a dozen critical minerals that can be produced as co-products, things like indium and gallium and germanium and bismuth and tellurium. And we can do that not just because we have them in the ore body, but because the owner of Resolution Copper, or the operator, which is Rio Tinto, who owns 55%, has one of 2 remaining copper smelters left in the United States. And so today we produce 15%, and we also produce a host of other critical mineral co-products along with that. But the science and the technology and the engineering, the geology is actually the easiest part about that. And I'm a civil engineer, but the majority of time that I spend is talking to people outside the business, not inside the business. And it is not really something that they ever teach you in engineering, how to talk to people. In fact, I feel like we're a very extroverted, introverted type of person that has to be an extrovert. But it is, how do you meet that challenge to bring on new supply in a way that society demands, and do it fast when all eyes are on you and you're not in a remote location? So it's all about how we really truly funnel many, many voices into one outcome. And Resolution Copper is located in what's called the Copper Triangle of Arizona. This is a location where copper and mining has been the dominant fabric of the economy for over 100 years, but it has been in decline. At one point, there were 10 operating copper mines. Today, there's 2. And in the United States, there are about 100 until the late 1980s, along with 22 smelters and refineries producing copper. The United States was globally dominant. Today, China is globally dominant. But we can recover a little bit and get it back, but we do need to bring on new supply in order to keep the last remaining smelters and refineries going. So what you see in front of you is a picture of the Copper Triangle. So there are 6 local communities that are our nearest neighbors. They are most affected by the mine. And there are 11 Native American tribes that have ancestral ties and claims to the location. They are all separate and distinct sovereign nations. They are located anywhere from 1 hour to 8 hours away and span 2 states. So the challenge to engage in a way that is transparent, respectful, is just immense in front of us. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a flavor of how we did this, because if you get this wrong, you just simply can't bring on the new supply, right? Rock, don't talk back. That's very easy to do. This is really hard. And I'll say the last, maybe one thing that's important is the project is essentially all on private land. And so a little bit would be on federal as well. But in the Southwest, you can't walk 2 feet without the ancestral site of somebody that was there hundreds to thousands of years before you. So a couple of things that we did to create really meaningful two-way dialogue and funnel all of these voices to help support us and move the project forward. Really, I think there's a few key words. If you take away from anything, it is co-design and good faith and transparency. Maybe there's three. So one of the things we did very early, engaging the local communities, and we had to do this in a couple of different ways. One, bring together a citizens group, so community working group. So representatives from all of the 6 local communities that are on our doorstep. Over 10 years ago, we asked them, would you help us co-design this mine? And everybody said yes. And it is things like how we would mine this mine. It's underground, but it's where the tailings would go, where the concentrator would go, pipelines, roads, power lines. It is a big endeavor. So we started along that path. And over 10 years, I can say that today we've legitimately co-designed the mine in collaboration with local communities. The tail end of that is something that we've formalized in a good neighbor agreement. So these are things where over 10 years, at least bi-weekly to monthly meetings to work together at the table, roll up our sleeves and design this mine. Have to be very vulnerable, have to be, have a lot of courage and a lot of trust in communities. There's a lot of times I sat in people's homes having coffee, talking about the mine and going through, all the aspects of it. But the Good Neighbor Agreement is something that we've just signed. So all 6 cities and towns that are our nearest neighbors have signed on to it. We cover 2 counties, so county supervisors in both, and dozens of groups and organizations that were also part of the table and worked with us. It wasn't just about designing the mine. It was also about once you understood where the scope of the project ended up, then you work together on benefits, mitigations, and that's really the fun stuff. So we just signed this Good Neighbor Agreement, and it is a life of mine agreement that really fosters good faith, two-way dialogue. We are accountable to the community, just like we are to regulators at the state and the federal level. Out of this, we then ended up having a lot more economic empowerment agreements. We work together to solve all kinds of problems. So it's, again, a really good tool. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something that can happen after about a decade's worth of that good faith trust. Switching gears to the Native American tribes. So they are not an hour away from us. They are very far. And it was much more challenging to build trust and get to know these are not our nearest neighbors. There are people that live very far away from us. So what we first started to do in collaboration with federal agencies before, and this is just like we did with the local communities, we started to co-design the mine. With Native American communities, the first thing that we did is a 3-year traditional knowledge study, where in this very, very broad area around the mine and 100 miles around it, where are things that are special? Where are landforms that are sacred, that we need to absolutely avoid? And so over 3 years, we worked through that. And out of the 25 areas that were identified, we were able to avoid all 24. The 25th one is right above the ore deposit. So through, again, the co-design process with Native American tribes, we were able to, we forgo 500 million tons of the ore, which is a very significant amount, in order to reduce the impact by over 70% to leave the rest of the area intact. What that did, though, is we started to build a relationship. And then once we identified all the areas we needed to avoid, then it was a matter of understanding, okay, we've got the feedback from the local community. What about everybody with the 11 Native American tribes? How can we mix and match and move things around? And where are the specific ancestral sites and areas of importance on the ground? So then 5 years after that, we worked closely with the tribes, identified community members from their tribes to work alongside us, biologists, anthropologists, archaeologists, water resource specialists, and they scoured 100% of the landscape, over 60,000 acres, 5 detailed alternatives, and they looked at every single aspect of the landscape: ancestral sites, seeps, springs, medicinal plants, rocks, minerals. And then they use that information to report back up to their elders, who are the consulting officials. and they were their eyes and ears on the ground, so they could know exactly what it was and make informed decisions about where pipelines and infrastructure and roads and how they could move things around. A couple of things on this is you could see that they really did scour the landscape, and one of the biggest things that we did was relocated, because the collective voice of tribes and communities, we wholeheartedly relocated the entire mine plan. What we originally started with at year 1 looked nothing like it looked at year 10. Tailings wholeheartedly changed, pipelines, power lines, everything got redesigned. So, and what that did was build an awful lot of trust and an awful lot of transparency with people that we knew. Really, we didn't know each other at all. But through those two avenues, we were able to step in the shoes of the local community and tribes and see the issues through their eyes. And likewise, they were able to do the same thing with us and step in our shoes and see the issues through our eyes. And we got to learn a lot about each other, but also importantly, improve our plans in important ways. The other thing that once we were able to do a lot of these things, and we were able to dig into more deeper issues like water use. And we've completely changed the original design of water. So now we're using the latest and greatest technology, and will be the lowest water use per pound of copper of any mine in the nation and in Arizona. And that's important. We're also focused really heavily on seeps and springs and water resources to preserve and protect. It was important that we located the facilities away from seeps and springs. That was the #1 priority to tribes. It also happened to be the #1 priority to local communities. So spending the time understanding where they were. The tribes found them, they mapped them, they monitored them for years, and today they monitor them today. We also then looked in what else could we do, because no matter whether it's a road or a building, you're going to have some impacts at some point. So in addition, it wasn't just about avoiding and minimizing, but it was also about making sure that we mitigated as well. So there were thousands of acres of mitigation lands that would be preserved as part of this process. We'll have a mine, but we're going to save all of these other areas. And on balance, it felt fair to everybody. So thousands of acres with riparian habitat, lakes, creeks, running water. And here's just a couple of pictures of some of them. Some of them are really the jewels of the Southwest. 3,000 acres along the lower San Pedro. 1,000 acres in the La Ciénegas National Wildlife Refuge. So really some special places that have wild and scenic rivers and dozens of endangered species. This process took about 10 years. And I always heard so many times, Rio Tinto has operations all over the world. In Australia, we do this in 2 years. In Canada, do we do this in 3 years? Why does it take so long here? And to go fast, you have to go slow at the very beginning. And it just takes that time. But because it was such a genuine, transparent process, we've now deepened our relationships with Native American tribes in a way that I don't think we ever imagined. We have thousands of acres of private land, and we actually now co-manage that land with tribes. They come out on a quarterly basis. They help us manage the ancestral sites. They monitor seeps and springs, the riparian areas, and then we have that continuous two-way dialogue. We also consult with them on a regular basis for every little thing that we want to do, whether it's reclamation or change a road or relocate a building. And so there's that constant transparency, and it's really built an incredible amount of trust. And it's led to very meaningful life of mine partnerships and benefit sharing. Emery Oak Restoration Program is just one of them, but we're now doing life of mine benefit agreements with the tribes, just like we do with the local communities. And I mentioned this before, the power of letting communities monitor what you're doing. We have a lot of eyes on this project, about a dozen state and federal regulatory agencies, but also tribes and communities monitor us on a regular basis as well. And so just a small sliver, something a little bit different for all of the thought leaders, the future thought leaders in the room, and the scientists and the innovators, when you're thinking about bringing on new supply to meet the demand, and in your future, think about some of these things. I'm sure by the time you're you're in your careers, you'll be doing it better than this, but hopefully just brings a little bit different and some perspective on what really matters. It's people and having those conversations. So thank you, everyone.